Hello and welcome to another fully live Friday episode of Hacking with Friends, running on hacker time per usual with our special guest, Kilian. Kilian, thank you for joining us today. And that's the
Thank
surprise,
you.
everyone.
Yeah, right. I'm glad to be here. I'm glad it worked out. It was a little iffy with some of my travel lately, but things are looking good now.
So I just wanted all of us to see, Kilian's okay. Kilian's still here. So thank you for joining us back on the news stream today. I know we had a lot of people who've been hanging out for an hour now, and I appreciate every single one of you. I normally do the stream at like 1 p.m. no matter what time zone I'm in, so you can kind of figure out like where I am by that. But lately, we've been doing it a little later, and frankly, like don't want to make you guys wait, but we kind of have like almost like better conversations when more people join. And I find that these streams are almost a little more lively, almost rowdy sometimes. So let's get into some cool stuff to talk about. I had an interesting Q&A session this week earlier. And if you were there, then you know that we talked about some things that could have shut down an airport. So we had our special friend Angelina on, who was obviously an aerospace expert. She's talked about that before, but there was one project in particular that runs on a very low-cost device that would potentially shut down an airport. And I want to talk about that today because that's a pretty big claim, but I'm pretty sure that this would actually ground flights. And I think that it's only a matter of time until this actually happens. So another shout out to my team. So we had Angelina on talking about this vulnerability, but she wasn't the first person on our team to talk about this. Our girl Aria is a writer at Hackaday and has been hitting it out of the park with some really super interesting articles in the last couple of weeks. But one of them that I found particularly interesting, and also this one, I was up late reading last night. If you're interested in Ethernet for hackers, it's actually, this article is so cool. But the one that we're talking about is this one. Can't disable DJI Drone ID, spoof it with an ESP. So this is pretty crazy. This allows you to use an ESP to make it so it appears that there's tons of different drones kind of flying around. So if I go to the GitHub repo, what this actually does is use the 2.4 gigahertz spectrum to output a bunch of random signals, basically very similar to the way that an ADSB attack would look like. So Angelina has talked about ADSB. It's a system that pilots and ground control use to figure out where planes are in the air, and it relies on trust. It's just an open broadcasted signal. It is not encrypted or validated in any way, and this drone ID system works the same way. So if you have a drone detection app, you can actually try this yourself, provided you are away, far away from an airport. You could load this up on an ESP, turn it on, and actually see from your device that there appears to be numerous drones flying around in the air, like doing all sorts of random paths. Right. So that's pretty incredible. Like the fact that we are using open standards for drone identification that can be easily spoofed on a device that is so incredibly cheap. You could theoretically anyway strap one of these to the bottom of your drone, and even if you were technically complying with drone ID, it would be really difficult to kind of figure out which drone was real in this big cluster of false signals. So for all the projects that I saw this week, I thought this was probably the craziest one. And from a cybersecurity or hacker's perspective, if I was somebody running an airport right now that had integrated some sort of detection for drones that relies on the sort of ID, I would be a little upset at the standard that had been created that doesn't allow me to distinguish an attack that's, capable of being done from a device that costs about $1.80 on AliExpress.
Right. That's terrifying.
So a couple of questions in the audience. One of them is asking GPS jammer, and no, what this actually is doing is it's creating false signatures. So it looks like there's like 15 or 20 different drones in the air broadcasting their GPS locations, but in fact, they are spoofed. So the idea is that you're hiding the real drone by creating an army of fake drones that are always swirling around it. And if you linked a couple of these units together, you could really create a truly impressive amount of fake drones where an entire area would be blanketed with drone signatures. So this is like an attack where you can make it look as though there's a lot of aircraft where there aren't any. And Angelina was talking about this would cause a notice to airmen where perhaps like they wouldn't attempt to land at an airport that thought that there was drone activity nearby or other aircraft hazards. So this is a pretty big deal. If you accidentally load this on an ESP and plug it in while you're on an aircraft and start generating drone signatures just like surrounding the aircraft. I don't know if that's going to set off a ton of alerts, but if it does, you are probably going to get into a lot of trouble. So just be aware that the cost for spoofing some of these systems, like we've talked about how vulnerable ADSB could potentially be to this sort of attack. This is very similar, perhaps even in effect, when we talk about how aircraft could potentially be spoofed. And in this case, we're talking a little smaller. We're talking about drones, but still, it absolutely could cause consequences. So this is my like craziest tool of the week. For $1, somebody somewhere is probably going to shut down an airport. And whether it's by accident because they were running this project and forgot to turn it off, or on purpose to do it deliberately, I don't know. But I'm going to stay tuned to the news, because this is one I just feel in my bones is going to be news in a couple of weeks. So it's just kind of bubbling up there. First from GitHub, and then the Hackaday. And I feel like, in a couple of weeks, like we might see like CNN talking about like this hacker can shut down an airport with a postage stamp size, microcontroller.
Yep. That's exactly it. Funky Monkey says, sounds like an easy way to get jail time. Yes.
Yeah, that is the problem here. So sometimes like the magic of hacking is how like small things have big effects, but I don't think that you can comprehend the big effects of what would happen if you ran one of these things at an airport. There would be a lot of federal agencies involved. You would be in a bad spot. So please be responsible. Like, just because I'm sharing that this exists doesn't mean that I want you guys to try it. Now, if you want to try something funny, I'll give you something funny. All right. You want to be disruptive on an airplane and not get arrested? I've got something for you. So our good friend Katspazio has made a Bluetooth spoofer that makes it look like various devices are nearby and will pop up pairing notifications on people's phones. So if you want to create an Apple Vision Pro on the next flight that you're on and just watch people like looking around for the guy like going like this and like pinching things in the air, then that's a harmless prank that you can play on other passengers to make them think that some guy has whipped out their Apple Vision Pro and that they could potentially even pair to it and control it. That's just like, that's just intrigue. That's just creating drama on a flight. This drone creating thing is not creating drama on a flight. So let's be clear that as ethical hackers, I need to kind of put that out there.
Yeah.
So, so this was also one of our commenters have mentioned the possibilities in war are huge. Yes, signals intelligence and electronic warfare are two huge components that we're seeing in the Ukrainian war. And this is something where we're looking at how people are adapting to these conditions to make it difficult to know when a drone is in the air, or if there are no drones in the air, to make it so people think that there are. Like this sort of like electronic countermeasures is forcing us to develop more secure standards, and hopefully is having the intended effect of forcing people to look at the available technology and make a best effort, try at securing some of these protocols and making them resistant to these sorts of attacks. Because yes, during friendly times, like having these open protocols is really nice, but during potentially unfriendly times, or when someone is doing something they're not supposed to, it's a little bit more difficult to distinguish between a real threat and one of these basically electronic warfare techniques that allows us to create a bunch of airplanes or aircraft when there actually are not any out there. The real damage are the drones we've made along the way. Let's talk about that. So is it here? Did I include it? So this is one of my least favorite stories of the week. So I don't know if you guys saw those that killer drone demo where some people were talking about the risks of how with the current technology today, it's possible to create drones that are autonomous and are able to basically like attack someone with facial recognition. So somebody decided, watch that warning video that says like, hey, watch out, this could be done. It was like, hey, that would be such a great party game. Like I should make drones that chase people down by face. And they were able to do it at full speed. And this was kind of a warning that we really have very little defense against these sorts of weapons. So let's just say that we have like some drone detectors, or we have some things that allow us to detect drones if everybody's playing by the rules. If people can make drones off the shelf and then spoof a bunch of drone signatures, this is something that we've never faced before. It's a really interesting area. So I just wanted to shout out a couple of drone related stories this week. The first one being more about countermeasures and electronic warfare, and how hackers are able to create like lots of aircraft potentially, that in this case drones, but also how these drones are getting more easy to access for all sorts of people, and the intentions of them are questionable in some cases. So I'm as a drone pilot, the thought of being able to create a drone that like autonomously goes and does something, especially equipped with facial recognition, it's kind of scary because I myself as somebody trying to see how like possible it would be to have a drone swoop in on you without you noticing it, have like either come in from really, really high up or come like up over a ridge and then down at pretty good speed at like 30 miles per hour. And there's just no chance to really recognize it until it's so close to you, you can't do anything. So even commercial like DJI drones that are not like FPV drones that are going like super fast, like they're really hard to detect from a distance and they're able to swoop in all fast. Like it's just a new era when it comes to these low cost, sometimes single purpose drones that are able to incorporate all sorts of technology, sometimes just observation and stuff, but sometimes in this case, potentially lethal. So least favorite story of the week. I hate this one. I was hoping to honestly die before this was like something that I needed to worry about. Just have it like making like some rich person angry and having them send a hunter drone that's always looking for me all of the time.
I mean, there you have it. This is we're going to pre-write your obituary. Killer drone takes you out.
Right, like R.I.P. Kody KIlian, 2040, forgot to pay credit card bill and assassinated by contractor debt collector drone or something. Like, yeah, I don't know. So, all right, let's move on to some better topics. This one's like truly depressing. All right, so wait, this one's kind of depressing too, but Microsoft is saying that Russian hackers breached its systems and did some pretty sophisticated things to do so. They initially did password spraying attacks that were going after these production accounts, but unfortunately some of these non-production accounts actually had elevated privileges to Microsoft's internal systems, which allowed them to gather passwords and conduct further password spraying attacks. So this was kind of a password spraying blizzard, as some might say, by a group called Midnight Blizzard, which is basically just the Russian FSB. They were using this technique over and over and over to breach accounts, get more passwords, breach accounts, get more passwords, and try to be as persistent as possible while exfiltrating information about source code and other organizations that Microsoft works with. So this is still under investigation, and Microsoft has been pretty transparent about the details. So if you're looking for what some of these nation state campaigns look like, some of them do not look sophisticated. They are merely difficult to stop because of the pervasiveness and the way that they use whatever credentials they can claw out of a system with their initial access. So looking at some of these smart, dedicated APTs, some of them are just extremely persistent with some of these basic methods that just work. So really interesting story for anybody interested in APT tactics and a company that's willing to be pretty upfront and open about the kind of attacks that they are up against. All right, next up we have CISA and the NSA sharing best practices for securing cloud servers. I mean, a lot of these honestly are things that we at Varonis like touch on. So this was kind of nice to see like some of the major agencies talking about why the move to cloud like introduces some new risks and also like how you can do things like, as we talk about, like lowering your blast radius by making sure that something like a managed service provider doesn't completely destroy your organization. So like everybody works with like contractors, and a lot of this advisory was also talking about how if you have other vendors or other providers, like how do you make it so that you minimize the damage? Because many of the things that these agencies were talking about were managed service providers getting attacked or breached or downstream attacks or watering hole attacks, often going after the providers of services for small, medium, or even large size companies. So being more resilient against that, making sure that if you do get breached or if you do get attacked, like the damage is less, like that's pretty much what this is talking about. But again, it's encouraging to see this collaboration because sometimes like people look at advice from the NSA and be like, like, are you trying to hack me? But having an agency like CISA, which seems well-funded, well-intentioned, and seems like they're doing a pretty good job also getting behind this, I like to see that. And they also have really good stickers. Influencer marketing right there. They got me by finally spending some good government money on like nice stickers at conferences. So you better believe that RSA, the first table I'm going to go and raid is going to be CISA, followed by the NSA. But the NSA always give me like, they send someone over to me with like a creepy stare to get me to stop taking the stickers. And I can only handle about 30 seconds of it before I give up. And those are the only NSA stickers I get all year. So if anybody here is going to the RSA conference, we're already planning that. We're super excited. But that's my source for like government stickers. And I really hope that they'll be there. Often I'll get them at Black Hat too. But I noticed that like there were a lot of organizations that tend to RSA that just are not at Black Hat, which is really weird. And the NSA was one of them. So you better believe, Kilian, I'm going to enlist you and as many other Varonis people as I can into going up and be like, wow, look at these stickers. Can I take 10? Can I take 15? And then the person stares at you like, okay. And then we'll combine them and I'll pay you cash for these NSA stickers.
Oh, wow.
Like what I like to do is I put NSA stickers all over my luggage. So like, you know, I just think that it's like fun to add flair and it makes people like wonder what I do. And also it's super easy to find my luggage at the airport because I'm the only one that's plastered. There's stuff with like super patriotic eagles and like NSA cyber. It's great. It adds a little bit of flair to the work environment.
Maybe this is, you know, I'll spin this. Maybe this is perfect government propaganda. They send the creepy guy over to stare at you, make you think like you really want these stickers, then they can track you. There's a little embedded RFID chip in there. Just saying, keep it in mind.
Those dudes always invite me to plug into like their USB charging station to charge my phone. I'm like, that's okay, guys, we're cool, but I'm not gonna do that. Nice try. But yeah, like they definitely have some excellent stickers. The NSA people last year had this sticker that just had this dog that looked like really shocked and surprised, and it just says NSA Cyber, we've seen things. And I traded that for some really good stickers at the C3 conference. I was the only one tossing NSA stickers into this very like punk hacker conference. And it was funny to like see people like look at the sticker and be like, where did that come from?
Right.
So yeah, they're fun to cause drama with, I guess I'll say, as for the NSA stickers. All right. So moving on, we also have Switzerland, which apparently had 65,000 government documents leaked by Play Ransomware after they decided not to pay. These are sensitive federal government files and also involve files that relate back to the military. The information here is largely personal information around people, but also sensitive information. Let's see, names, email addresses, telephone numbers, and addresses, plus IT information, software, architecture data, and unfortunately passwords. So this is going to enable a lot of follow-up crimes potentially. That's always the risk with these breaches. So we'll have to see if there's any follow-up stories based on the information that's been released in this breach.
Yep.
This one caused an uproar in the hacker community. There were lots of people pissed off about the original story. And Kilian, can you guess why people were upset about this, or did you see this?
I did see it. I knew we were going to talk about it. Because of course they singled out a Flipper Zero as the evil hacker tool for everything.
Right. So as a fellow creator of open source like hacker tools, wink, wink, like this nugget, I was very interested to see how this would go because my stuff is much more involved in getting it like in the hands of like teachers or people running workshops or students who are learning on their own, whereas the Flipper is for everyone. And that kind of spice sometimes gets you in trouble when people demonstrate doing things that are on the edge of research, or maybe the Flipper isn't actually the best tool for it, but it's just a tool that you can use to demonstrate. So these researchers did what anybody following the press PR playbook is going to do. They're going to take something that's very visual and they're going to take this abstract, boring attack that's usually like done on just a generic looking laptop and put it into your hand and show it off. So the reaction that this caused was in part a result of the Canadian government attempting to ban the Flipper on the grounds that it is an auto theft tool, following in the footsteps of Brazil and some other places that have looked at this tool, seen the popularity and been like, no, we're not even going to deal with this. So there was a lot of heat initially, the way that this was reported. It's like, this is clickbait, like this place sucks. And it was funny because it's like the researcher was taking it back, the article publisher was taking it back. They're like, I thought the Flipper Zero was cool. What's going on? You know,
right?
But it was just the wrong moment. And as somebody who was in the hacker community, I saw how poorly this article landed, and I was just like, "Oh my god!" It's like such good research too.
Yeah,
you know, it's really interesting. It's a pretty straightforward thing, but they made it too sexy, and that was really the problem here. So, if you saw this on Twitter, again, a lot of people upset that they chose to use a Flipper Zero during the sensitive time where some governments are considering whether or not to ban the Flipper. This kind of reinforced. They're like, "Oh no, the Flipper can be used to hack cars." I think somebody was honestly asked, like, is there any circumstance where this is real? They found one where it is. They ran the story, and then the hackers were just like, rah, like, we like don't ban the Flipper. We love it. So so let's talk about the actual science here. Let's talk about the research. So what hackers were able to show was that if you created a phishing network, and let's be clear, the Flipper doesn't even have Wi-Fi. So in order to run this, you have to install, like you have to physically plug in an add-on that does have Wi-Fi. So frankly, like the Nugget, like my Nugget is a better tool to run this attack than a Flipper is. The Flipper is just, more famous and like, people have seen it. So like if you install an add-on onto your Flipper and create a fake access point, then you can potentially cause board drivers who are waiting at a charging station to connect to it, and like basically go through a process that allows you to download a key to your device that lets you unlock and start the car. So that's cool, but it's a pretty standard phishing attack, and it could be run on any laptop. And in fact, like a laptop with like a Yagi antenna and like a wireless network adapter and doing that from a distance would be the way I would do it. I wouldn't, whatever, but or like a super low cost version where you're just taking a board that costs a couple of dollars and slapping it underneath the charging station or something like that, the way that like credit card skimmers do. So there's ways of doing this that would be, I think, like more straightforward, but they chose to go with the Flipper, and that's why everyone was mad. But the core thing here is Tesla does not notify users when a new key is downloaded to a phone. So that means if I was able to trick a Tesla user into joining my access point and whatever else, and that's totally possible. We just had Katspazio on the show showing us how he used a Nugget to make a phishing page that basically asks you for your information in order to join a network. It would only take a small modification to make this be a Tesla. And said, by the way, Katspazio, if you're watching. So like if you wanted to show off this technique with another device, then it would certainly be very simple to do so. And the only real magic here is bypassing two-factor, which basically we're acting as a man-in-the-middle device. We're just forwarding authentication and acting like we're the ones logging in when we're gathering information from them live. So once we link their account, then we download a key, and we could potentially then unlock their vehicle. So if they had left the area after giving us access, then we could drive away in their Tesla. And I don't really know what happens after that. Maybe you go to a Tesla-specific chop shop, but I kind of figure there must be an underground Tesla hacking culture, or like a stolen Tesla, like black market, because they've just been around for long enough that I'm sure people know, the deal at this point internally. So anyway, pretty fascinating attack. Generated lots of nerd anger, and I wanted to just get out in front and explain like why people were upset. And like it is valid. Like I said, like one of my Nuggets would probably be just as effective at gathering Tesla keys. But the Flipper Zero also has the ability to, for example, emulate NFC things, and really like a good ThinkPad I think could do this as well. But a good ThinkPad on eBay and a Flipper cost about the same at the moment. So it's anyone's guess as to whether or not it was valid to be using a Flipper when talking to journalists about this, knowing that potentially Canada's trying to ban it. I think that following the PR playbook without having much contact or like knowledge about this, it would be easy to make this mistake for anybody who thought that this would make a great story, or if the story was already in the works and it just happened to get published at a really unfortunate time.
Yeah. The funny thing about this whole article too is, like you mentioned, it's all kind of simple existing stuff, but there's like really easy solutions for it. Like I believe Tesla said that they don't notify you about adding the new key. I think it said, and then also like they have a physical like RFID key. Like I think the article said, if I'm remembering, that like to add the new mobile key, you don't need to be like in the car or have that physical other factor present to do it. So these are all like very easy things to add on as a layer of security to not have your Tesla stolen. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's just, it's weird. And the like Tesla's response is like, well, it's the way it's supposed to work. I wasn't thrilled with that. I don't know.
Yeah. That was kind of the response was that, hey, this is the intended behavior, but I think it's a pretty obvious update to just alert the user when a new key is added and allow them to block it. Like if you get a notification that says, hey, new key added, did you approve this? And you hit yes or no on your own device, that completely makes this attack not possible. So even if you do get phished, even if you do accidentally log in, you'll be at the charging station, you'll connect, you'll put in your credentials or whatever, you'll think that you have free internet, and then boom, you get this pairing request, and you're like, no, I do not want to share my car's access to my car with the station, deny. That's just how like a normal company, I feel like, would deal with this. So we'll see what happens.
Just it was weird, but yes, very interesting story, and I saw this one coming.
No, it was one of my favorites this week. All right, so we talked a little last week about how Anycubic printers that are connected to the internet got a new G-code file delivered to them, which basically was explaining that there was a vulnerability. It had been reported, but they weren't doing anything about it, and they were doing this to basically force Anycubic to release something to patch this. Like it was just like a security hole that was so pervasive that this researcher or whoever it was decided to do the same thing that that guy who printed to every web connected printer did one time. It was like, hey, just so you know, everybody can print to this printer. If you want to fix it, disconnect, or maybe the manufacturer will do it. But as of right now, this can be printed too. It's the same deal. Like people could have done some kind of nefarious things, and using a 3D printer as a way of getting into someone's network is really the scary thing here. Because if it's connected to your network, it can act as a beachhead for further attacks, and you don't want something exposed and vulnerable like that. So Anycubic has released a update that fixes this vulnerability. They've been relatively cool about this. They've acknowledged the problem. They pushed an update. This was originally thought to not be happening, but after the publicity that was gotten from it, a lot of people probably asked them to fix this. And getting a message that says your machine has a critical vulnerability posing a significant threat to your security. Immediate action is strongly advised to prevent potential exploitation. It's real. Like it did sound like this was a pretty severe vulnerability. I like how they made the little worm too. Boop. But yeah, it seems like they have released a security update. They're looking into hardening their MQTT server. But a couple people were, questioning why they hadn't responded to the researchers' initial requests. So it's unknown if this is going to be like a market turn of them being more transparent about this sort of thing, or if it's just going to be like, we had to push this out and then they threatened the researcher with legal action, as happens sometimes. So, technically the researcher did access like a bunch of systems that they didn't have permission to. And whether or not, depending on whether those systems were authenticated or secured, like there could be an argument that they didn't have access, permission to do that. So that's kind of the danger of making a show of things. In this case, it certainly gets results, but those results might come at a cost. And that person might not feel in the end as though it was worth it to secure all these random people's printers if they personally have to go through trouble to do so.
Yeah. It's unfortunate. I like that. I like conceptually that he did it, but exactly that he could end up in some trouble, but the companies have a responsibility to patch this stuff. And it's unfortunate that they didn't respond in a timely fashion and ended up like this. So
absolutely.
Here it is.
All right, next up we have this was a pretty when they bring out the FBI guy in the bow tie to read the indictment, you did something really bad. So this is this was a Google engineer that was caught stealing AI tech for a Chinese company. They basically did some pretty sneaky stuff when it came to exfiltrating the information. They would take proprietary information like source code, they would put it into Apple Notes, and then they would turn the Apple Notes into a PDF, which they would then upload to their personal Google Drive in order to avoid detection. So eventually they exfiltrated this information to a Chinese tech firm. They also apparently signed an affidavit saying that they had deleted the data, and this was absolutely not the case. So eventually they earned themselves a pretty damning indictment with 10 years of prison on the table. So the information involved here was a cluster management system, basically things that allow large data centers to communicate with each other and execute tasks, the kind of thing you need to be able to figure out if you're going to run a data center capable of doing large AI stuff. The data theft is really the most interesting thing here. And we see a lot of like insider threat kind of scenarios where like someone has an agenda and they join the company. Maybe their agenda the entire time is actually to exfiltrate information to a third party and find clever ways of getting around expert controls. So this is one of those examples where this was not elaborate. Like I just explained this, the trade craft here in three sentences as to how it works. So even though it was just a matter of moving data around and uploading it and then exfiltrating it to a personal account, this seems like, like something that, I don't know. It just seems like something that should be a little bit harder sometimes. So looking at the details of a company that's willing to be transparent about how data theft happens, in this case, Google, I have to applaud them for, in some cases, this was like the arrest and everything brought this to light, but also Google's been kind of transparent about what transpired here. So talking a little bit about what a real insider threat looks like, in one that's been successfully prosecuted is really the most interesting part of the story, because it just shows like no matter what size of your organization and what kinds of controls you have, there's all these scenarios that pop up that make it really challenging to stay on top of the various ways information moves within an organization.
Right. The only thing I'll say about this is I thought it was kind of funny that the guy who did all of this, even after the affidavit and all that, I think he was like listed as what, the CTO of some other like company that he was leaking the information to. Like you would think that Google would, Google the person at some point. I don't know. That was the part that I kind of found funny, is like he wasn't exactly hiding it either. And like he would go to like conferences on behalf of that other company uh during this process. And I don't know.
This
Just
is
thought that was kind of
something.
funny.
All right, so we've got a spicy hot take in the chat. When a vendor does not address a good faith research discovery, the researcher should be indemnified under law. So obviously, this is not the way that things work right now. In order to be really indemnified, you would need to submit your research to something like BugCrowd or something else who would like manage, or Hackeroni is another one, and they would basically manage the disclosure process for you and make it so that you would not get sued or prosecuted or whatever else by being really careful and risk averse about it and going through the correct channels. A law or something stating that security researchers who have submitted a proper and valid, bug bounty or bug report have a certain amount of time before they're allowed to disclose it, and it's on the company to react. That would light a real fire under some of these companies that are just dragging their feet on these things that affect users but are not a financial priority. I think that until something like that happens, we're going to see a really slow cycle and a lot of neglect on some of these really important disclosures. So creating some sort of legal framework. I know this is kind of a hot take. Like who likes, creating additional burdens and regulations on businesses and whatever? Because me, if I find out that there's a bug with my like little dumb website that like doesn't do anything, and I have like X amount of time to fix it before like somebody just releases everything, and I've got a bunch of stuff coming up, like, for me, I might feel kind of bullied or harassed or like forced to do something I don't have the resources to do. So it's always a back and forth between the business community and the security researcher community. Those are the two polar forces here competing. But yeah, like the way that this plays out, like I honestly believe that there should be like something reasonable, like 180-day like period, like that's like the longest, but then like a disclosure path that's closer to 30, that's like more normal, and have like, if there's all these delays and all these like extenuated circumstances, 180 days is like the max, whereas like less than that is potentially, I don't know, like I've just seen that thrown out as like one of the different like time periods that's been respected by researchers for like giving a company ample time to react and make a press statement and whatever else. Like, giving them that much time is really like you've had all the time that you can reasonably get to fix it. So a lot of like debate out there as to like what the proper way of doing this is, but I would advocate for making things more secure, even if it does mean that companies need to reallocate some of their resources to fixing some of these problems when they come to light.
You said it better than I ever could. I completely agree. That's it. There has to be a drop dead date. There has to be, there's carrot, of course, but then there has to be stick.
Ooh, people in the chat proposing all kinds of crazy sticks. I love it. Damages should be trebled. That's 3 times damages if a vulnerability was disclosed but not acted on. Love it. That's a great one. What else we got? Researchers are able to provide a proof of concept but not actively exploiting. So you can just drop the vulnerability on GitHub and let other people pick it up and weaponize it. I love that one too. Yeah. I love these sticks, you guys. Like as hackers, like coming up with all these things to like beat a company into fixing their products with is funny. So yeah, who knows? Like I would really like to see some sort of framework that makes it less frightening for researchers to present their findings, but also prevents companies from feeling like they're being blackmailed. Because that's frequently what the complaint is. Like a business will get a research, like a bounty from a hacker who's maybe even asking for compensation for like the work they put in to find it and fix something. And then they'll feel like they're getting blackmailed by someone who's threatening them, basically where they're just like, there's going to be big problems if you don't pay up, like that's how it feels. So this kind of back and forth is really like a source of discussion, like a dialogue that's difficult to have, but is also something I think we need, because the current guidelines suck and they make security researchers feel very unsafe sometimes reporting some of this stuff, and even more unsafe asking for compensation, even if they do excellent work. All right, next up. All right, so this is an interesting attack because TeamCity is used to build software. So for people who are looking at potentially scary or damaging attacks, the TeamCity attack is something that is starting to worry people, because there's still a ton of these servers that are available that do not have the proper patches applied. So originally there was some exploitation here, but now they're starting to be widespread exploitation. And the concern is that if you are able to access these Team City instances, you can potentially insert malware and other things into software that then gets built, packaged, and released and put into other places. So the kind of chaos that could cause, a bunch of software being built and compiled with backdoors and all sorts of other like bad stuff, that is really the concern here, because of the nature of the software that's been found to be vulnerable. So these are continuing to lag in terms of being patched. The most seem to be in the United States. We've got 269 of them. So all of these vulnerable servers, I'm just going to cross my fingers and live in like a separate reality to say let's just hope that these are honeypots. And so many security companies are interested in security that they just created honeypots in every part of the world. But in reality, I'm going to guess that most of these are actually vulnerable servers. Although if we just created a truly circular security culture where like honeypots trigger alerts, trigger alerts from trigger honeypots, and they just grow on both sides, that would be pretty funny. So again, this security vulnerability is a 9.8 out of 10, which is basically a perfect Olympic skating routine with like one dissenting like judge that like only gives a 10 to their own country. So like in far of security vulnerabilities, this is pretty bad. I don't know why I'm giving you like Christy Yamaguchi's like scale of security vulnerabilities here. But
I was going to say, have you been wronged in the Olympic skating committee? Like, is this your backstory, your villain origin story? You were an Olympic skater, and the Canadian judge gave you a 9.8 out of spite.
No, I was just a hardcore teenage gamer, and Christy Yamaguchi's Skating Adventure was my game of choice. So I tend to relate a lot of things back to a skating score when I need to just pick an out of 10 range. I'm sure a lot of other hardcore gamers on here can relate.
That's the new thing where we'll have a new thing where, we'll look at the CVEs and everything else, and we'll give it the Christy Yamaguchi score of should you be worried.
Okay, cool. Are there seriously 110 people in the chat right now? That's great. Hello, everyone. All right, so moving on. This is really cool. All right, so we've got we've got an attack against WordPress. Like that's nothing new, but really what this is doing is unique and interesting to me. So let's say that you have a WordPress website, it gets attacked. And now when users visit it, their browser loads JavaScript, which attempts to log into other websites' administrative portals. So what they've done is they created this WordPress botnet that spawns like JavaScript code that will hijack your browser into attacking the next WordPress website. And it will coordinate all these compromised WordPress websites to basically attack like website after website after website and just spam them with these password spraying attacks. And it doesn't do that using like any sort of infrastructure. They're not paying any sort of utility bill for like using processing power. They're using your processing power when you go to a compromised WordPress website. So that to me is crazy. The fact that they're able to be like, I would like to build a botnet that compromises WordPress websites out of WordPress websites. Like that's really novel. The fact that it's all hijacked like CPU, GPU power here that's being used to attack these other websites that's all done in the browser. Like perhaps this is nothing new, but I still find it really, really clever and novel when I see an attack technique that you just think about it and you're like, wow, like that, I can see how that would scale. Like, you're just like using one thing to just enlarge itself over and over and over. And anybody that falls into this trap is just donating electricity and processing time to this criminal organization. So if you're looking for the most creative attack of the week, I think that this is it. I was like reading the details of this and I was just fascinated. So if you want to read a really good story, hacked WordPress sites use visitors' browsers to hack other sites is probably my favorite for just clever hacker stuff that I didn't even know was possible. So if your computer starts to get hot when you're visiting your favorite WordPress site, you could be part of a cyber attack.
Right. Now this was cool. I got nothing else to add, but I thought it was really interesting. A little hacker inception there.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so next up, we have some attacks that are impersonating U.S. government agencies. These are business email compromise, and they're pretty straight to the point. So I just want to show you what these attacks look like so you can be aware. So you'll get an email and it'll be like, notice the U.S. government requires farmers of all hat types to bid now on various projects. You go and it says that it's going to allow you to bid on all these like grants or farmer things. And it makes use of these QR codes, which are a novel way of getting around email URL scanning. So if this was a plain text URL, it would make it pretty easy for an email scanner to determine that it was a malicious URL. But attackers don't need to hide their infrastructure as carefully when they do campaigns like this, because it allows them to evade the first level of defense, which is, you know, just good screening on your email and looking for actively used malicious URLs. So the fact that users can still get this delivered, and the fact that they're using kind of a novel, like artistic style QR code that still works, but it's like the dots instead of the usual one, that could actually, you know, like fool some QR scanners. Like, you know, the average phone QR scanner is going to work, but maybe the average email scanner is going to miss this one because it's formatted in kind of a weird way. So I just think like these sorts of scams are really interesting. And when you log in, of course, it's an invitation for for a bid. It allows you to bid on all these fantastic, unbelievably priced things. And the problem is, in order to apply, you have to put in all of your business information. So the idea is that once they are able to get access to your email, let's say that they send you a follow-up email after you register, and you have to click to log in, or you have to download a PDF and it infects you. Once they get access to an email address, they will just send invoices to your coworkers and be like, hey, I need this paid. Can you pay this one real quick? Hey, we really got to get this invoice paid. And these sorts of business email compromises, sometimes they'll lurk within the network for weeks, months. I used to work for a fashion organization, and I can't tell you what it is, but the acronym was FBI. So back when I worked for this fashion business called the FBI, I learned that they had a ghost in their email. And this is somebody who had done a business email compromise. They'd gotten access and occasionally would just randomly send invoices to one of the other two people that worked there. But these two ladies had their offices right next to each other. So they'd be like, excuse me, like, did you just send that? No, it's just the guy. Okay. And then delete it. And they never tried to get this guy out of their system. They were just so used to these business email compromise things. They had their own system of trust and verification that relied on one person leaning back and shouting across the hallway to verify they weren't getting phished. So I'm not sure that that's the best way, but it works. And it allowed them to consistently defeat the threat actor that was lurking in their system, just sending emails, pretending to be one or the other. So these are things that happen to real businesses. I can't say that like outside the fashion industry, you'll see like a longtime resident like this that's like acknowledged. They're like, oh, we got a guest in the email server. We don't know how to get him out. But yeah, it really does happen. And this is the way it often does happen, is these sorts of phishing attacks that rely on people's status as a business by offering something they really want, like some sort of aid or government, you know, freebies or something that's sent out to people specifically. Interesting to see it also, in this case, targeted at like farmers. All right. So Canada's anti-money laundering agency is offline after a cyber attack. This is not a lot of details here, but Canada has had a number of interesting cyber attack victims, including the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, which is a bit unusual. So this was their financial intelligence unit, and there was a number of things that were leaked. However, didn't seem to be any critical information. So this is still an ongoing incident. I don't have a lot of other updates yet, but this is something we will probably be revisiting next week based on the sensitivity of the organization that was hit here. All right. So we also have, this is, I think, my uplifting, heartwarming story of the week. So the U.S. government is going after predator spyware operators hard, and they are adding a number of people to sanctions lists that are in, I would say, like allied countries that otherwise have really good friendly relations with the United States. So having like some of your country's businesses being blacklisted by the United States and having their assets frozen is certainly a strong message. So some of these allied countries to take these businesses more seriously, or maybe even develop some sort of framework for making sure they're not able to exist within their borders. Often these companies are run in places where it's difficult to go after them legally, but a lot of these companies are run in Ireland, Greece, Hungary. So these are like, you know, like EU countries, some of them that are pretty easy to pursue legal action in, and they're also involved in spying on US citizens. So because they are mercenary spyware groups that are not controlling the distribution and targeting of their products very well, because frankly, it seems like they don't care. Otherwise, why would they be in this business to begin with? A lot of these people kind of felt like they are beyond the ability of normal law enforcement or like a nation state like the United States to go after. And that's because in the past, they've provided services to a lot of these organizations. So this was kind of a weird end to the breakup between some nation states and these middle tier, like mercenary spyware developers that are in fact selling their product all over the world. And sometimes the people being targeted by them are actually US citizens who have very
Right.
little protection or ability to defend against these sorts of attacks. So because like big US companies like Apple and Google are spending so much of their time dealing with these like, with these like mercenaries creating zero-day vulnerability based cyber weapons that force them to roll out these updates that we talk about in this news segment all the time. It's interesting to see the government of the United States anyway finally make it difficult for some of these people to do business, because frankly I hate them. So yeah, all of these people suck. I will go on the record saying, like, I don't like any of these cyber mercenaries. I don't care if they work for law enforcement or if they work for intelligence of whoever with like a terrible human rights record. I just think that this is like, I've been talking about how researchers have two options. They can go to a rundown bug bounty program that's going to like give them a pat and maybe even tell them that somebody else already discovered this and that it's not worth anything. Or they can go to one of these companies that do not care who ends up getting impacted by the cyber weapons they build and make $1 million. So until we kind of dismantle the ability for these companies to make money doing this, there's always going to be that moral dilemma when a researcher's like, well, I want to feed my family and I found a really great vulnerability. This is high impact, but this company is not responding to me, or, they're not going to pay me for it. If I find something really impactful and I get, I effectively get nothing and I feel really screwed over by a bug bounty program, and then I find another thing that's even worse, what am I going to do with that? Well, the financial landscape right now encourages people to go to one of these companies and potentially sell it. And that's why we have all these human rights defenders and politicians and other people who are getting targeted, reporters and other people who, provided there's a rich person that hates them enough, are basically completely vulnerable to these sorts of attacks and have no real way of defending themselves. So yeah, I really don't like these companies. I think it's definitely like the dark side of cybersecurity, and the fact that they're like, I see them at conferences sometimes, or I've seen businesses like this at conferences, and I just give them the stink eye, and I hope more people do too. All right. So this is wild. We've got some cybercrime news. So Black Hat is done. The heat was on. They had 20 million in the bank, and they were like, you know what? That's good.
Peace.
So ransomware groups like Black Hat operate by basically working with affiliates. So these are initial access brokers or people that buy from an initial access broker. So let's say that I'm just some guy. I don't know. I have no idea how any of this stuff works, and I want to set myself up. I've got $20,000, $30,000 and I want to become a ransomware kind of guy. How would I do that? Well, I could go on the internet. I could purchase initial access from initial access brokers who are highly specialized people that just do phishing all day. They just nothing but phishing. They turn around and they sell access to the account. They're like, hey, here's a loot box. I don't know what's inside. Or maybe they do. They vet it and they're like, hey, there's a lot of great stuff in here. This is like a big company and they're wide open, and they'll sell it. So I, Mr. Random Guy, will buy myself access to this company, and then I will go and become an affiliate of a ransomware group. And that ransomware group will be like, all right, here's a file you can basically execute on the target device that will do everything for you. It'll encrypt everything. It'll create a page that allows you to negotiate with the victims. And then we're going to split the difference here, or like we're going to split a certain amount. So the ransomware developers get money. They don't have to expose themselves to risk. And me, some random dude that's cool with the risk, can get in on the cybercrime gang with no programming experience and no access whatsoever to anything. I just have to buy it, basically. So this is a money game. People have started making a good amount of money just getting involved in this thing where they put the two pieces together, execute a cyber attack, and just hope the FBI doesn't knock on their door someday. And a lot of these people got burned over the last couple of weeks. And the reason is, when using someone else's infrastructure, there's always the risk of an exit scam. And that is exactly what it appears Black Hat has done. So some of these affiliates are coming forward and saying that there was a $22 million ransom on the table that had just been received. By the way, in completely unrelated news, we'll talk about United Healthcare paying a $22 million ransom, but I'm sure that these two events are not related. But the Black Hat gang is claiming that the feds shut everything down and that this was attacked by the federal government. But looking at it, it appears that they themselves hosted this like seizure notice, which doesn't seem to be genuine. And the government is also saying that they were not involved in this. Typically, they like to trumpet these sorts of announcements, but in this case, it looks like the federal government is like willing to comment that like, no, we didn't have anything to do with this. This is actually just them pulling some shenanigans on their affiliates. So you have two different classes of criminals turning against each other. You have the affiliates turning against, or rather the developers turning against the affiliates, and now probably the affiliates being pretty hesitant to work with the
Right.
Black Hat group again. So it's really interesting to see how the cybercrime gang has turned into these pretty
Right.
highly specific roles of people that are very good at this one specific part that they do.
Mm-hmm.
So watching how these two factions can kind of specialize and then turn against each other is pretty crazy, because reputation is everything in this kind of like black market sort of like crime organization. So the fact that the Black Hat gang has exited and burned all of their people kind of means that it's a lot less likely they'll be able to assemble the kind of affiliate structure that they were able to assemble in the past. But maybe that's not a concern for them. Maybe some things happened we don't know. Maybe they decided the whole thing got too hot and they just wanted to take the money and run. But with the added attention that they've gotten from some of the attacks they've done lately, I wouldn't be surprised if people were feeling that federal government and international task forces were like starting to breathe down their neck.
It's interesting. Two things. One, this group has disappeared a couple times before and come back in new fashion, so it's not completely out of the question that they did that. But second, this could be a really interesting like psyops type of experiment where the government took them down and like, no, we swear we didn't. And so that distrust, that would be cool as hell.
I love that. Okay, so one thing I'll say is that in Europe, it's been a trend that these cybercrime marketplaces, like the German crime market, which was taken down a couple weeks ago, they are taken down by police, who then say that they've been running the whole thing for like years,
right?
And then they say we're doing the same thing with every other cyber marketplace as well, and they just instill that fear where it's like, okay, if this happened with one, it could be happening actively with another, and you would have no idea. So trying to create like division between ransomware affiliates and like a strong ransomware brand, if the government was able to do that, would be a very clever and sneaky thing, Kilian. That's
I love it.
I love that theory. All right, waxing security conspiracy theories on Security Forward. All right, next up, we have an interesting little piece of malware that is targeted specifically for mobile operator networks. So if you are a sneaky country and you want to be able to bounce things all around a telecommunication company's network, or if you want to be able to monitor the location of cell phones or other sorts of things, you would probably need to infect their network. And this is a sophisticated implant that was able to do so in a way that was quite clever. So of all the technical things we covered this week, this is a very, very interesting one. It's kind of showing that there are some of these gateways that are exposed to the public and allow attackers to potentially infect one of these telecommunication companies and then implant this bug, which, let me find our most confusing graph of the week. It's actually not even that bad. This one's like pretty straightforward. So this is where an internal target telecommunication company would be infected and then able to receive packets through their own network by an attacker, like sending and kind of like repeating packets that go through an internal gateway. So the idea here is that if you want to maintain persistence in a telecommunication company and basically be able to run bash scripts or observe what's going on, or whitelist certain devices to join a network or leave a network, you could basically run your own little shadow telecommunications company or espionage company, tapping into the telecommunications data and potentially also creating accounts or doing things that would be very bad. So looking at how an ultra stealthy attacker has been using an implant that's able to receive specially crafted magic packets to start communicating with a device on the outside of this network is really interesting. It shows how some of these threat actors are able to have these very, very, very specialized attack tools. This kind of reminds me of like the Berkeley packet backdoor that we were seeing that had been like latent and been used for such a long time to receive like these special magic packets and act as a Linux backdoor in all these different systems. The kind of innovation that's coming off of implanting something and having the ability for anybody anywhere to trigger it or get it to do something is really an interesting innovation in how these sorts of backdoors and bugs have been developed. And seeing them deployed against a target like a telecommunication company with so much juicy data, like that is really interesting to me. All right, we're getting down to our final moments, everyone. This one was just kind of wild to me. This was a content farm in India was impersonating 60 major news outlets and selling advertising on it. So while it wasn't established that this was an organization that was spreading misinformation, they were copying
Right.
articles wholesale and then selling advertising while pretending to be larger organizations. What's funny is that my content was actually caught up in this. I found a number of these
Really?
websites were hosting null byte articles that I wrote a long time ago. And I'd be like, well, that's weird that they're not attributing or whatever. And
Right.
sometimes they would even cite my name on it, but they wouldn't link back to the original article. So what I
Right.
found out is these are SEO scams where they're
Yep.
basically like building up so much SEO on the article that they then place all these invasive ads and gambling stuff like on it and charge exorbitant amounts to people who want to advertise on these fake news websites. So currently they're just copying stuff and it doesn't seem like it was, like AI generating fake news or anything, but I expect in the future that this business model will become more profitable when combined with AI. So yeah, these sorts of content farms aren't just necessarily there for propaganda. Sometimes they're just for scams and for ripping off content creators and making a buck off of advertising for content that's not theirs.
Yeah. Yeah, it was interesting. I will hesitate to say like the article, but like I found it just a really novel way to do something kind of scummy, but like also not particularly malicious, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So we already talked about the Killbot. We talked about Aria's fantastic article. Let's see. I have a couple other things to mention. So this weekend, I am going to be teaching alongside a couple of my friends a couple of classes to raise some money for Null Space Labs. So if you are interested in learning programming with CircuitPython and you have a nugget, because it is happening literally tomorrow. So a USB nugget is required for this one. Actually, for both of them. If you've got a USB nugget, there's two different classes you can attend. It's $30 if you've got a nugget. And again, helps to support a really fantastic hackerspace, Null Space Labs. And it's online. We've been doing these classes in person for a really long time, but we decided to start doing more of them online. So if you want to hang out, we're going to be doing these actually on Discord, which is super cool. But you can check out Null Space Labs meetup group if you want to join the class. We're going to have a lot of fun. So we also have Scale coming up. Southern California Linux Expo is going to be super fun in Pasadena, California. We are official sponsors of the event, and I'm going to have a table there. I'm taking suggestions on things we should do at the table. I was thinking it might be fun to do a little like CTF, like a little duel thing where you and a friend could sit down and like if you like win or something, or like whoever gets a high score, like we give a prize to. And I've done a couple things like with like Raspberry Pi versus Raspberry Pi. And like using a nugget to kind of facilitate the game. But the idea is we'll be able to meet some of you. Hopefully we'll see some of you at Scale and we'll have some interesting and fun things to do. So far I have a bunch of these, I don't have any next to me, but I have these cat lights that are these silicone, like sitting fat cat lights. And I've bought 25 of them. So I'm going to have a grid of these lit up Pusheen lights behind me all going crazy to try to attract attention. But if there's any other things for the booth that you think we should do, I'm excited. I'm going to be here with a lot of friends, and we only have a 6-foot table, but we have like a 10 by 10 foot space, so it's gonna be cool. So we'll need to bring some chairs with all the people we're planning on bringing, but it's gonna be a lot of fun. So that is coming up, and I already talked about the drone hacking stuff, so I think that's just about it. But if you want to see a description of the class that's going on tomorrow, our good friend Autumn put together this video explaining all the things that we're going to be teaching. So hopefully we'll see some of you at the class tomorrow. Hopefully we will see some of you at the Scale conference where SecurityFwd is an official sponsor. But if you want to support the stream right now, you can go to varonis.com/Kody, that's Kody, to let them all know that they should keep letting us do the stream every Wednesday and every Friday. Doesn't cost you anything, but it lets the people at Varonis know that we're doing a good job and you appreciate us. So this week, our link is talking about Gen AI. So there's a lot of products coming out like Microsoft Copilot, which allow you to do some pretty powerful actions via natural language. Obviously, that has some unintended consequences when these things are new. And Varonis has worked really hard on finding some of the edge cases of how you could accidentally expose a lot of sensitive data via some of these tools. So we have a really actually exciting and cool webinar coming up that I think KIlian and I are going to try to bring parts of it to the stream so you guys can see like what you can do with Copilot and then what you can get wrong with Copilot and how easy it is to do that, because Copilot's super powerful and like a lot of people are going to be talking about it. So if you want to check this out, you can sign up here. But also if you just want to go to varonis.com/Kody, that's Kody, it lets everyone know that we're doing a good job. So yeah, wow. Thank you everyone on the stream today. 100 KIlian, why are you small?
I don't know.
There you go. All right. Thank you to all the 134 people on the stream today.
That's awesome.
Maybe we should start doing it a little later. Maybe you guys on the East Coast? Are you getting off late? Like, let me know your story. Comment on the YouTube channel and let us know like where you're all coming from. So, because it's great to see so many people on the stream. We really enjoy getting feedback. And also, we have another stream on Wednesday that you should check out. So if you have a question, if you didn't get your question answered, you can go to our Discord server, or you can also, of course, leave it on the channel and we will respond on Wednesday live. And you can go back and watch it if you don't have time. Maybe we'll do the Wednesday stream later too. If you guys keep showing up in the 134 numbers, then I will continue to do maybe a little later. So great to see everyone today. We will talk to you on Wednesday, and enjoy your weekends, everyone. Goodbye.
Take care.